What's up, Gator fans? Tonight we have a bit of something different on our Samford preview, which isn't really a preview, but it's preview night, so we're just going to go ahead and call it that. Tonight's show is presented by BetUS, and of course, we're going to talk about them and Melbourne Law a little bit later. Some huge news for UF on the quarterback front. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's give a huge welcome to a bit of a special guest tonight. He's been on before, and he is legit in the next room. 2006 national champion, and of course, my favorite punter of all time, Eric Wilbur. For those of you that don't know, obviously, Eric is my husband, and we were at the game this weekend together, of course, and Eric wasn't thrilled, but we're going to get to that in a minute. Let's start with the quarterback, though. Obviously, we've been thinking about and praying for Graham Mertz, who is still in concussion protocol. Hope he gets back quickly and doesn't have any long-term issues because concussions are incredibly serious. Now, looks like we got DJ Lagway starting this game because Mertz is in concussion protocol. We don't know if he's going to get to practice at all this week. So it's DJ time. Eric, thoughts on a freshman quarterback starting? This is obviously only the second game that he's even been on the sidelines as a college player for. He does get to start against Samford, which is a little bit better than getting to start against, Miami, but doesn't have much under his belt in terms of experience. What are your thoughts on him starting?
Yeah, so this is kind of a best case scenario for him coming in and getting the start against Samford. I obviously don't like the fact that he had to come in against Miami. I think the biggest issue with young quarterbacks is building that confidence. And no matter how good they are, if they don't get some confidence right off the bat, it's going to be hard for them to recover from it. So I think he's going to hopefully develop a little bit of confidence against Samford. But then, looking into the future, honestly, no matter how well he does, I don't know if I trust our O-line moving forward to be able to protect him enough in the coming games so he can maintain confidence that he gets against Samford.
So let's say he does incredibly well. And listen, Samford is a team that Florida has struggled with before. They hung 52 points on us in 2021. But let's say he plays incredibly well against them. And then Mertz comes back and starts the Texas A&M game, and he struggles like he did against Miami. Does this create a quarterback controversy?
Yeah, I think it does create a little bit of a controversy, but you got to put the best players in that you think are going to give you the best chance to win. So even if you want Mertz to be the guy and he's the leader of the team, if he's not executing and not performing to help us win, we got to make a change. Something has to happen, and that's an obvious change that can happen.
I think this is something where Napier is potentially damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. We've seen quarterback controversies be created by fans at the University of Florida a lot in the past 20, 30 years. I think about your team in 2006 when Chris Leak was the starter, and there was a lot of fans calling for Tim Tebow. Tim would have those small packages in place for him, and he would be really successful at them. And there's a lot of people that would clamor for Leak. And from having been behind the scenes that, Leak was the leader of that team and it was important for him to be the starter through that season. But sometimes that's hard for people on the outside to see. But I think Napier's kind of in a damned if he does, damned if he doesn't position. Because if you don't try Lagway, then you get grief for not trying something else. You do try Lagway. He does well against an inferior opponent. But you feel like Mertz is got the experience, so you go with him, particularly if you question your line, and you get questioned that way too. And the fact that the temperature of the fan base is not friendly towards Napier doesn't help either. But
Yeah.
do you think that if Lagway does well against Samford and Mertz struggles against Texas A&M, it makes it more likely that Napier is going to start Lagway at some point because if he does great this weekend?
Yeah, if he does great this weekend, then there's definitely an increased chance that we will see Lagway sooner rather than later to replace Graham Mertz. Obviously, Lagway is hopefully the future of the Florida Gators. Hopefully, he stays with the program for the full 4 years. but it, it's tough that like Mertz is a great leader and you don't want to lose that. And hopefully, even if Lagway comes in and wins the position, hopefully Mertz stays to be the leader, the vocal leader of the team, and lets Lagway just kind of take his role as the quarterback of the team for right now. But honestly, put in who's going to help us win. That's what we need right now. So I don't think the fans are really going to care if there's as long as there's a W, um, who the quarterback is.
So we watched the Florida Miami game in person on Saturday, and sitting next to you during some of those games is
Very
not
peaceful.
always great for my blood pressure. But let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you mentioned while the game was going on. There were absolutely times where we didn't feel like the effort level was where it needed to be. Talk about that.
Yeah, but that's honestly that's a carryover from what I've seen the last 2 years. Even if it is slightly better than it was, it's not even close to where it needs to be. You can tell if someone is giving their absolute all. Every step, every breath, just everything is left on the field. You can tell, and I would say there are very few guys that at the end of that game you would ask them, could you take another step? And they're like, no, every bit of me is on that field.
Yeah. Do you think that you've seen the ability of this team improve over the last couple of years? Effort aside, do you feel like you see the talent improvement?
Yeah, the talent is definitely improving. I think we got some good guys on the team. I just think that those good guys don't know what they're fully capable of doing. They only know what they're capable of, what they've been pushed to, and I think they can get pushed well beyond what they're currently doing and develop a lot more.
So special teams was the lone bright spot, truly, of Saturday. And is this my fault for begging too hard for it? Did everybody focus on special teams because it got so much, heat in the off season?
I mean, I would like to think that if getting harped on turned into pretty much an A+ in performance, then our offense and defense would have looked a lot better as well because they've received a lot of criticism too. But I was very excited to see that special teams did what they were supposed to. Obviously, a game can go one way or the other based on special teams performance. Obviously, it didn't help us win, but we definitely didn't lose by more because of it.
Let's talk about coaching and play calling that you saw on Saturday. I think that Napier takes a lot of heat for continuing to be the play caller, and I care. I can go both ways on that. I called for him to no longer be the offensive coordinator, kind of all last season and during the off season. But at the end of the day, he wants to be in control of his own destiny, right? And if he feels like being an offensive coordinator, being the play caller is what got him to the position he's in, and he's on the hot seat, I understand taking your own life in your hands kind of thing. But what did you see from coaching and play calling?
Nothing really. It just looked pretty basic. There was nothing too crazy. Obviously, when we had something that worked, it seemed like we didn't continue to build on that. So it's just very vanilla offense, and I don't know if he is calling that because he thinks that's all our guys are capable of executing, or what the deal is. But my biggest thing is, and we've seen it for 2 years now, the same thing and nothing's changing. So that's my biggest thing is something has to change and we're not seeing it. That's my biggest gripe right now.
So, this was the biggest home opener in the swamp in 30 years, right? It ended a 33 game home opening streak. Do you think this team took Miami too lightly, or this coaching staff took Miami too lightly?
Partially I do, but partially I think that we've been seeing from a what I assume coaching staff standpoint, we've been watching our guys compete against our guys. So we think we're really good when all of a sudden we go up against really good people and realize that we're not. But it shouldn't take that much. Like, you should not be surprised when you get your ass handed to you. You should be able to see that coming. And if you don't see it coming, that means you're judging things in the wrong perspective.
So, what are your expectations for the Swamp this weekend? Obviously, fans are pissed off. They are disgusted at what they saw on the field against Miami. So, do you expect that fans still show up?
I don't know. I hope some of the student section shows up, being a night game. They'll get their nap in and get some good tailgating in. I honestly don't have high expectations right now. I was excited for the pregame atmosphere around the Miami game, and then it just kind of went right back to where we've been.
So fans are obviously disgusted about the Miami game. This weekend is obviously not, I mean, Florida should win this weekend. I would never say that something is a guaranteed victory, but Florida should beat Samford. And I don't think you get any roses for beating Samford. So it's going to come down to what happens the next week, whether or not the fans are back on the bandwagon, whether the fans are going to continue to show up in the Swamp. Uh, you know, Obviously a little look ahead to Texas A&M, but Miami was one game. Do you think that Florida can pull it together here?
I think it's possible, but again, I think things need to change. So if we can make some changes between Miami and A&M, then yeah, I think it's possible to come out and have a great showing and, kind of change the trajectory that people think we're on right now. That's going to start with a dominant performance over Samford, both offensively and defensively. We can't let them put up 50 points or anything like that, no matter how many points we score. But on the other side, we got to have some explosive plays. We got to have some big hits. We got to have something that's going to get the fans excited to come watch football and say, hey, we know we can do that against Samford. Now let's see if we can do it against A&M. But that's where I think the biggest factor is going to be is against A&M, what adjustments have been made to put us in a better position.
I'm looking at the comments as they scroll through on the sides, and I saw that somebody said, that it's just one game and Miami is the much better team. And they are. Miami is a much better team, and it's just one game. But I think the thing that is so frustrating to fans is that Florida and Miami got a head coach 8 days apart from each other. They have similar resources. Florida has much better facilities. They both have the same recruiting landscape. And one of them has a much better trajectory at this moment than the other. So I do think that is a large portion of this. It's how we looked compared to somebody who started at the same exact spot as us. But, some of the questions that are being asked too are about discipline. And I think that makes sense. What did you see from a discipline standpoint on the sidelines? And how do you correct that now that the season's already started?
So talk about discipline. If we look at that one late hit against the quarterback, I don't necessarily fault the kid for that one. He was trying to get to him a little bit late. Yeah, the timing was terrible and stuff like that. But that I'm not putting too much emphasis on. When we look at, you're talking discipline, I think more so, hey, we're not jumping off sides. We're not making dumb mistakes and stuff like that. So it's less discipline there and more, I guess I'd call it discipline in the effort, both on and off the field, on the sidelines, the intensity. That's what needs to come back, right? There needs to be a vocal leader. There needs to be a physical leader. There needs to be some intensity. There needs to be some fire. And if Napier can't bring it, someone has to. You can see Mertz is trying to do it, but it's almost like he's fighting an uphill battle because no one else is fired up. No one on the sideline seems to really care that we just got our asses kicked. No one's trying to do anything different. They're just like, oh, well, there's another game. Let's move on.
So is this team too soft?
Honestly, I think so. But I think that's something that can be fixed. I think discipline and intensity is something that, yeah, you might run some players off and you might run some good players off. But the ones that stay and fight through, basically hardening up and being tough, those are the ones that are going to win you games.
Urban said today on his podcast that he was disgusted when he watched it and that it's really hard to watch for him as a former coach at Florida. Is that the way that you feel as a former player that, was around for some of the best times in Florida football history?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look at that and all I can think is if the team that I had and the leaders and the players that I had saw what was put on the field, people would be getting punched in the mouth walking off the field. There would be fights on our own sideline because our guys aren't giving their all and going as hard as they should.
Was that so? Do teams take on the personality of their coach?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely think that that's what happens. And I've told you, and I've told a lot of people, it's hard for me to believe in a football coach that doesn't have any fire. Now, you don't want him fiery all the time. You want him to be able to kind of, rein it back in a little bit. But every once in a while, just get pissed off. You see a kid walking on the field, and then he gets to just walk off the field and no one says anything to him. No one just lays into this kid. I mean, that's not football.
Somebody just asked if you're in our bathroom. No, he's not in the bathroom. He's in our bedroom upstairs. I took over the office. We don't generally both do this at the same time. So before we talk about the Samford game, I want to give BetUS some love. You can go to BetUS and bet on the game right now at the link in the description. Scouting reports out on the Samford team, but we do know, a little bit. They have a dual threat quarterback who had 302 yards passing and 95 yards rushing last week. It's still Samford, but that is something to note. How do you think this defense is going to handle a dual threat quarterback? They saw that last week.
Yeah, we saw it last week. Obviously, the offensive line for Miami is going to be a step or two above Samford's. So that's going to give a quarterback a little more time and a little more leeway to do what he wants. The biggest thing I want to see is dual threat quarterback. Are we going to put a spy on him? Last year, we tried that a couple times, and the excuses were the spy wasn't doing what he was supposed to. We broke down some film. We saw in a couple instances that was the case. I want to see some hits. I want to see us fill a hole, not get pushed back, not let people get yards after contact, and we're just driving through. That's what I want to see on our defense, because I know we're going to be able to win the game. That's not the biggest thing. I want to see the fire. I want to see football players.
So let's look at the offensive side of the ball for a minute. It'll be DJ Lagway's first start, right? Or at least that appears to be the case at this moment. What do you want to see out of him, and how do we keep him safe?
So that's the biggest thing, right? Is how do we get him the experience and still keep him healthy? And that's where you got to walk a fine line. So I do think we're going to run the ball. We're going to be very run heavy. I think there's going to be some quick pop passes. I don't think they're going to let him go downfield too much. Maybe, probably 2, maybe 3 times during the game. And then every once in a while, if he's scrambling around, tell him to take off. But you need to emphasize to him, even though, yes, he's a competitor. Yes, he's a big guy, good athlete. Get out of bounds, get down. Do not go for the hit. Just be a quarterback. That's what quarterbacks do, especially against Samford. There's no need for you to show that you can run over Samford's safety. All right? We don't need that risk.
So let's say this is a close game, right? Let's say Samford scores a lot more points than we are expecting. Is it because we played a lot of young guys? Is there enough there for our defense to be competitive in some of these SEC games? We heard all summer that our defense had taken, 10 steps forward. We brought in Ron Roberts. He was going to be the energy. He was going to be the coach of the coaches. Is there anything that you saw when you watched that defense that makes you think they're better than last year? And is there anything they can show you against Samford? And I know it's Samford, but that is going to tell you that there's progress being made.
From what I saw, no. I honestly, I want to see it. I want it to be there. I don't know if our fundamentals are a little bit better than what they were, but our grit is not there. So, and that's something that's hard, right? That's hard to just flip a switch and turn on, but it's possible. But someone has to drive that, and who's going to be that person that's going to drive that? That's going to ignite that defense. You know what? Screw it. Go get some penalties, right? Go crazy. Maybe every once in a while, because you're going so hard, you hit someone a little late, but just go hard doing it, right? Get the whole team fired up, get the fan base going, piss off the other team, just do something.
All right, guys, those of you that are watching the live right now, if you have any questions for Eric that you want me to ask him, go ahead and type them in the comments. We'll probably pull a few, right there. But Eric, before we go, I want to have you recap for me. We spoke last night to the Gainesville Quarterback Club, and it was really fun. But you told a story about your time with Derek Harvey and an incident with Derek Harvey. And you've probably told this on my channel at some point over the year. I'm not really sure, but I think that it was such a good microcosm for why your team was so tough and why your team had the success that they had. And I have a feeling that everybody's going to love it. So tell me the story.
So the biggest thing with Meyer is anyone's able to call someone out as long as you're doing what you're supposed to, right? You can't call someone out if you're not giving your all. So in the off season, we'd break up into teams. They separate teams, and we'd do agility drills, and it was competition. Everything's competition. There's always a winner and a loser, and each team had a coach that would go around with them, and they keep track of wins and losses. And if your team lost at the end of the day, you had to run more sprints at the end of practice along with your coach. So Coach Mullen was my team's coach. We lost that day. So I got Coach Mullen on my right side. I got Derek Harvey on my left. And we're running 20-yard sprints. It's full out 20-yard sprints. And we all know if you're not going your hardest in the sprints, you're going to have to do it over. We're all going hard. And after about 15 sprints, Coach Mickey Marotti, says, all right, those don't count. We're starting over. And everyone's just looking around like, what the hell? Why are we starting over? He's like, hand on the line, get down, go again. So we go after about 3 more. He's like, those don't count. We're starting over. And people are starting to get pissed off. And we're looking around like, who's not going hard? And everyone's going hard. We're all running hard. We're all giving our all out there. And he's waiting for us to police ourselves and kind of catch the detail of what's missing here and why we're having to do it again. And we all get down, we get set, and he says, all right, so I'm going to have to tell you. He goes, I said hand behind the line, and I want everyone to look at their hands. And half of us hand on the line, some people hand over the line, not everyone hand behind the line. That little detail was why we had to keep starting over and why the entire team was getting punished because we weren't following those details. So he's like, now you know, everyone down, hand behind the line. We run it. Says that one doesn't count. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So get down again and hand behind the line. I put my hand down and I look over and Derek Harvey, listen, I love Derek Harvey. All right. This is nothing on him. This was just in the moment. So he goes and his hand is on the line. So I give him a little tap. I'm like, hey, Harv, man, get your hand behind the line. And he just looks at me like I'm an idiot. So me being me, I was like, well, here, let me help you. So I moved his hand for him. And he took offense to that. So he got up swinging. I got up swinging. Coach Mullen is like running in. Everyone's jumping in, trying to figure out what's going on. But that's what it takes. That's the small details that if you are not emphasizing those details, and I mean hard emphasis on it, right? Emphasize the details over and over and over and over again. There's no such thing as good enough. You practice perfection, right? You don't expect perfection on the game field, but you practice perfection. So getting those details right and holding each other accountable for it, I think really led to a lot of our success.
All right, I'm going to run through a couple of these questions that I see. Somebody wants to know, Eric, can you coach the Gators?
Allie and I have talked about this a couple different times and how I would structure things. I will say I would save the university a lot of money.
All right. So next person wants to know, who is the best on your team?
The best what?
Well,
It's
it doesn't say. Let's go best athlete. Who's the best athlete on your team?
the best athlete. So most people would think I'd say Percy Harvin. He was a freshman when I was a senior. He was a great football player, fast, agile, could jump. Um, Marcus Thomas was a phenomenal athlete, right? You watch him do a round off back tuck at, 330 pounds or whatever he weighed. Like that takes some athleticism. But the two that I would say were the absolute best, just overall athlete, was Earl Everett and Bubba Caldwell.
All right. So this said, Allie's told a story that Urban made sure special teams ate first in catering. Do you know what the reason was behind that?
Starting punt team ate first.
Okay. And what was the reasoning behind it?
The reasoning behind it was punt team can make or break a game. One play, as we may have seen against Auburn in 2006. One play can make or break it, right? The quarterbacks are going to throw interceptions. Running backs are going to have a fumble. Someone's going to miss a tackle. Those things are going to happen in a game. But there is only one aspect, one play that you're going to absolutely flip the field. But if you get it wrong, it's going to change the entire course of the game.
All right. How'd you like that punt they caught inside the 5?
In there. Yeah.
Plant your heels on the 10. Let's go.
I know. Let it go. Man, but I will tell you, punters nowadays are getting so good at getting that ball to just kind of stop on a dime. I wish this technique was around sooner. It was until after college that I kind of picked it up. But yeah, it's obviously heels on the 10, don't step backwards. But yeah, can't make those mistakes. That's, again, part of the discipline.
Should our defensive goal be to pitch a shutout this weekend?
No, I don't think so. I think shutouts are very difficult to come by. And if you put too much emphasis on that, you're going to miss some other things. I think our defensive goal should be to be fundamentally sound, be in the right place in the coverages that you're supposed to have, and light someone up. Go hit someone.
Well, we're going to see what happens. All right, guys. It's time to make a prediction. But first, I want to give some love to Meldon Law. They are the official injury firm of the Florida Gators, and they should be your official injury firm as well. Hopefully, you're not going to need them anytime soon, but if you're hurt or injured in any sort of accident, let Meldon Law take care of you. They have offices in Ocala, Gainesville, Lake City. So if Meldon Law can be of any assistance, connect with them on social media and let them help you in your time of need. We are looking to partner with them on a ticket giveaway this year, so stay tuned for more information on that. It's going to be for a very big game. Appreciate Meldon Law for their support. All right, time to make those predictions. Eric, I have mine written down. What are you going with?
Obviously, I think the Gators win. I think we put up some points, but I think Samford puts up more points than we would hope. I think we win 52-31.
All right. Well, I said 48-12. So I think we are pretty close on how many we're going to score. We have different levels of faith in this defense for sure. But all right, Gator fans, we've got some other content coming this week. I appreciate you all for tuning in tonight. Obviously, this is a little bit different than what we'll do for most most preview shows. We're just not going to dive into Samford, but we wanted to chat with Eric a little bit about the team and about DJ starting. Please do me a favor and subscribe before you leave. We'll be live next week at this same time before Texas A&M. Let's go get the win this weekend. Thanks to BetUS and Meldon Law. I'll be there in the swamp with this guy next to me. Hopefully we'll see you guys there. Go Gators.